You're listening to the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski,
featuring author, guest, and criminal defense lawyer Lori Hellis.
Governor Brad Little has signed the executive agreement to extradite Lori Vallow Daybell to Arizona on conspiracy to commit murder charges. That will be happening at some point down the road as she travels to Arizona. There's a lot of things to question about another Lori Vallow trial, as the appeal process has also been underway for the original trial. Her new attorneys filing amended notices of appeal and asking the Idaho Supreme Court to take a closer look at over a dozen issues. There's a lot of those, and I want to go through some of those today with Lori Hellis, author and defense attorney. Welcome. There is a lot to look at here. Mental health, I think, being, in my opinion, probably the biggest one that I think does deserve a closer look at. Lori obviously is guilty as sin. She did horrible things. She lied about things. Just because if she was mentally ill, it does not excuse those sort of things. But we do have to kind of take that into consideration, I would think. We are, a society, a humane society for the most part. And if someone is literally out of their mind, not to excuse any of their actions, they should be punished, but appropriately, I would think. And what are we looking at here now with the chance of another trial in Arizona and her mental state and capacity to really absorb this and I guess, feel anything about what verdict may be rendered here, which would, of course, very likely be guilty. She doesn't seem to concept or have any sort of feeling about the first trial of feeling guilty as seen by her reaction during the sentencing hearing. What are your thoughts on continuing to poke this monkey with a stick?
Well, first of all, I think we're going to see a very different process between Arizona and Idaho. As you may recall, Idaho does not allow not guilty by reason of insanity defense. It is not permitted in Idaho. It is in Arizona. So I think we may see a different approach to her crimes. It's interesting because, as you know, I'm writing a book about Lori Vallow in the case. And as I've delved into it, I think one of the most interesting things that people have a hard time wrapping their heads around is the fact that she could be functional on a day-to-day basis and still delusional. And religious delusions in particular and delusions in general are kind of a funny mental health condition where, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm a retired lawyer, but it's an odd condition because people can appear to be they can manage putting gas in the car and they don't believe the gas pump is an alien coming to get them. And, they're not schizophrenic.
Yeah. But the person driving in the car next at the gas station, though, may be Kennedy's assassin.
Sure.
Yeah.
But they are delusional in this one sort of narrow sector of their life. And so it's hard to tell in Arizona what approach defense attorneys may take down there. But I think we'll see something quite different than what we saw in Idaho because of the difference in the way they treat mental health issues.
Do you think we're going to see a defense in general this time? Because we didn't really see one last time.
Well, that is really going to depend on Lori, because one of the reasons we didn't see a defense was because she really limited what her defense attorneys could say. She very clearly said, I don't want you to make a mental health argument, because there was still, even in Idaho, an argument to be made that she was so mentally ill that she didn't have the ability to form the intent to commit the crime. And so they could have gone there, but she forbid that. And a defendant is in charge of their defense. And in the situation where the judge has said she's competent to make those decisions, her attorneys ethically had no other recourse other than to say, okay, and follow her direction.
Yeah.
I still think there was certainly more that her defense attorneys could have done, but they, I'm sure, were frustrated and found her a difficult client.
Mm-hmm.
It's really going to be dependent on how cooperative she is with the attorneys in Idaho, with her defense attorneys there.
And it'll be really, like you said, it'll be in her hands of what she wants to allow them to go into. Clearly, we were wondering, is she going to throw Chad under the bus or something of that nature? Obviously she did not. The defense, her attorney seemed to a little bit, probably without her, knowledge or really willingness to do that. But it certainly, I would think, could have been a much stronger defense of going down that route. I guess the next question would be, where do you think it's going to go when Chad gets into court here coming up in a handful of months? Are we going to see a similar replay of Lori's case where they don't throw each other under the bus? They just kind of stick to this belief system and we're all just spectators in this world before her and Chad go and rule the ethers of Idaho?
Absolutely not. I think that Chad's attorney has made very clear that they're going to cast blame all over the place. I think we're going to hear a very vigorous defense. I think we're going to hear Lori was the femme fatale and Chad was just the dupe. And I think we're going to hear it was all Alex Cox's fault. I think we're going to hear all of those things. And those are things Lori absolutely told her attorneys they could not do.
Yeah.
And Lori was extremely angry with her attorneys when they mentioned Chad in closing. She was not at all happy with her lawyers bringing up Chad and even beginning to suggest that somehow he was the mastermind. So, yeah, I don't think that she will permit that in Arizona either. But I think that we're going to see a very full-throated defense from Chad on Chad's side. I think she's going to go firmly under the bus.
It's interesting to try and figure out the timetable here because we don't have a date on the Arizona trial. We do know about when Chad's will be started. So I'm going to assume the Lori Vallow conspiracy murder case in Arizona will probably be after Chad's trial. Do you think that what transpires in court with Chad will affect the angle and the route that they go in Lori's defense?
Good question. I think it's possible. It sort of depends on what comes out of Chad's trial. Everything we know is that Chad's trial will likely, in terms of the evidence that's going to be presented, will likely be kind of a mirror of what we saw in Lori's trial. But I do think that we're going to see the defense put on a more rigorous defense. I think we're going to see the defense challenge some of this scientific information. I think we're going to see them bring out some issues about the DNA, about the GPS and phone information. So I think we're going to see a much more robust defense coming from them. And it is possible that we could see new information, although I sort of question what at this point we might see.
I don't even know. I can't even imagine what new information might be out there that we haven't heard yet. The bar is so high.
Yeah. Well, and if you followed a couple of other recent cases where the defense has brought in some real humdingers lately.
Oh, yeah. Yes. The Odinists and things.
The Odinists and the conspiracy, the new conspiracy theory in the Markel case. And So I think you never can predict except that it might be unpredictable. So, but I think Lori's interested. I think Lori's in for an interesting road trip. If her transport is as it is for most prisoners, she's got a bit of a road trip ahead of her before she's going to make Arizona. So most of the time prisoners are transported. There is a transportation circuit throughout the West. And so what that means is they load them onto a bus don't think fancy motor coach, think more bus like out of The Fugitive. Bars and cages. And then they head cross country with them, stopping at every little podunk jail and prison to pick up and drop off.
Mm-hmm.
And it can sometimes take weeks for that process to happen. And they stay overnight in jails and prisons all the way across the country, which of course means that they have to do intake and be strip searched and cavity searched and all those things every night before bed. And yeah, it is a really unpleasant process. So if in fact she's treated like every other prisoner and not given special transport like she was when they brought her back from Hawaii, I think she's in for an unpleasant road trip.
Well, all the more stops that she can spread her word of Chad to everyone about, to be part of the 144,000 for that big party coming up in Rexburg.
Sick of the ads?
We are too.
Start listening with no commercials now and get access to all of our episodes in advance of everyone else.
Become a True Crime Today Premium Plus subscriber on Apple Podcasts.
Search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts or go to our podcast page and sign up now.
True Crime Today Premium Plus.
Sign up now.